It wasn't for Gordon Brown to sort of think, well, he didn't understand how I operated. That's the truth of it. I regarded myself as being responsible for giving him an unparalleled relationship with Sunday newspapers so that they didn't attack him.
Did Ed Balls and Ed Miliband know what you were up to?
No, even less than Gordon would have done, because they didn't work with me on a day-to-day basis in the way that I did with Gordon. I spent half my life going around the country with Gordon, on the phone to journalists while I was with him, whereas I didn't really do that with Ed Balls or Ed Miliband.
You describe in some detail in the extracts we've seen how the then Prime Minister Gordon Brown exploded periodically. Did you come to the conclusion he was psychologically flawed?
No. I thought he was a great man who...
With a fearsome temper.
Well, but like a lot of us, he had a fearsome temper, but he was also a hugely tender man. I mean, this hasn't necessarily come out in the extracts that have been seen to date, but there was a tenderness about him and a care about him and concern for his staff that you don't really see about in memoirs, and hopefully people will see that from the book that I've written.
But this stuff that you were putting into the newspapers reflects on him, doesn't it?
Ultimately, it does, because I was employed by him. And I think
protected you.
Right, but he knew that in April 2009, when I was dismissed for doing arguably far worse things than I've admitted to doing in this book. And he was deeply ashamed of that, and deeply ashamed that that was done by someone working in his employment.
How do you think politics gets to the state where people like you are able to do what you did?
Because people don't tell the truth, and that's what I've tried to do in this book. If people aren't honest about how politics really operates, then you can't clean it up. I mean, the great thing about this week, as much as Labour people will feel that, this has been disastrous for them, as Allegra has said, is that every single member of the Shadow Cabinet has now made a commitment and a vow that they will never do anonymous briefing. Well, we've never had that before. Didn't have that under the Conservative opposition. We've never had it under a previous Labour government, and hopefully that will be a good thing, and they will be held to that standard. Now, that's a side effect. I'm not saying I was trying to produce that effect, but nevertheless, that's the result.
Can politics be done like that nowadays?
Well, it should be. It should be.
Can it be?
But that's what
You concluded, inside Number 10, it couldn't be done like that.
But I was wrong. I was wrong, and I shouldn't have operated that way. From my point of view, I don't want to blame the system, but the longer I stayed in that system, the worse my behaviour became. And
are you sorry?
Yeah, deeply. And ashamed.
To the people you hurt, would you like to apologise to them?
Well, and I do in the book, and I do feel ashamed. I do feel sorry to those individuals whose careers I affected, and even more so to the sort of, if you like, the innocent bystanders that were caught in the way, special advisors that worked for them that ended up losing their jobs as a result of people being shuffled out of the government, people that were mentioned in the context of, these sort of sleazy stories who did nothing to deserve to be there, were not even sort of members of any political party, and of course I feel ashamed of that.